Philadelphia is undeniably a labor town, and COVID has only made it more so. I'm Juliana Feliciano Reyes, and I cover labor at the Inquirer. The pandemic has drastically changed the situation for a lot of workers. I mean, to begin with, tons of people were laid off. Lots of people lost their jobs. People that worked in service industries, like in hotels and in the stadiums, and people at restaurants. There's all these new regulations about how an employer needs to operate during the pandemic. So you need to give your workers frequent breaks to wash their hands. You need to mandate masks. Everyone needs to have access to a mask. And a lot of the times workers are saying that their employers aren't following these rules and they don't know what to do. One thing I wrote about recently was what it's like for people that work in retail and fast food when it comes to mask policies. So again, there's this mandate that all customers must wear a mask. But when it comes to how that works in practice, there isn't often any sort of policy about how to enforce that. Meaning, like, these stores aren't going to throw people out if they're not wearing masks. And the workers that I've talked to say that oftentimes they're basically left to their own devices about like how they should deal with customers that aren't wearing masks. And they're sort of stuck in this position where they're juggling like different risks and like their own safety and other customers' safety. And they're not being paid very much money. You know, these people are getting paid a little over minimum wage in a lot of places. One thing that we have seen the city do and city council do is that this summer they passed a bill that made it illegal to retaliate against any worker who speaks up about unsafe conditions. And this was a really big deal because workers were saying that the conditions at work weren't safe, but they were afraid that if they spoke up about them, if they went public about these things, then they might get their hours cut or they might get fired. And so people were basically just dealing with these unsafe conditions, like sort of suffering silently, you know. So a bunch of labor organizations, labor unions, and also labor organizations that represent workers that aren't in unions, they lobbied city council to pass this bill, and city council did this summer, making it the first city to have a law like this. We're gonna see, and I think we're already starting to see this, but certain unions, certain groups of workers, I think are going to be more militant. And when I say militant, I don't mean that they're going to be violent. I'm talking about workers who are more willing to fight. And we're already seeing this right now with AFSCME District Council 33. That's the city's municipal workers union, blue collar workers union. They represent sanitation workers, water department workers, airport mechanics. There's an election right now at that union, and the president has been there since 1996. And the people who are challenging him are saying they're saying, you know, what did our president, Pete Matthews, do during the pandemic? Like, our people, sanitation workers were out here, correctional officers are out here having to work because they were all essential and they needed PPE and they weren't getting it. And so they're using this example of like what their union leader did during the pandemic as a way to say like we should fight for more. What we got wasn't good enough. And I think it's a sign of things to come for other workers, like sort of using this moment as this like galvanizing force to get them to fight more, to make them feel like they should fight.